Welcome to the Kynective Media Podcast, and I'm your host, Jules Nadlin. Today, we're joined by Jon Schlaich, founder of Catchy Creative. In this conversation, we'll explore Jon's journey from design and packaging to digital strategy, discuss how AI is changing the way people discover brands, and examine why authenticity, reputation, and human connections may become even more important in an increasingly automated world. Hi, Jon, and thank you so much for joining us today on the Kynective Media Podcast. It's a pleasure to have you with us.
Thank you, Jules. Excited.
Yeah, we already talked about how I didn't sleep last night. I was so excited that I was thinking about this conversation today. Let's just get started about you and your journey. You originally started in the packaging industry before moving into marketing strategy. So how did that journey shape you and the way you thought about trust and attention?
Great question. So, yeah, my background is consumer packaged goods, CPG, and it's a bit of a ruthless space. Actually, you've got seconds to communicate your unique selling proposition to your audience. Right? You're given a 4x5 box and ink and paper, and you've got to, in some way, shape, or form, become compelling enough that somebody picks your package up in a sea of competition and put it in their cart. It's interesting. And as price increases, I think the amount of time people take to consider whether they're picking that package up also increases, and the amount of messaging you can use on that package also increases. So people become a lot more tolerant to long form communication. But I had said before that it's a little bit ruthless, and by that I mean it's a tricky space. So any sort of testing that you do takes months to kind of see the results of, because with packaging, there's production schedules, there's on-shelf dates, there's existing inventory to burn through, and then reaction time from customers. So trying to evaluate how you're trusted, how you're chosen, it's just a really long feedback loop.
Would you say there's some similarity here right now in the digital world? Like when you talked about, you have a certain small window of getting someone to take that package off the shelf and put it in their cart. It's kind of the same when we look at brands on social media right now. We really do have that little bit of a window, and they're saying 13 seconds is the attention span of someone online right now. So there's a real big parallel, I think, don't you?
Absolutely. Huge parallel for sure. So, and I look at social media as in advertising in that space is kind of disruptive, right? And you notice that when you watch what happens with engagements in that space. So if people click on an ad and they land on a landing page, they're usually on that landing page for, less than 5 seconds, less than 3 seconds. So any sort of transactional language you're using on those pages is missed. People aren't digesting that. So I think in a space like social media, people expect immediacy, right? So they want to click on something and get an answer right away, or some sort of communication trigger happens, and I call them communication funnels. But you can build out strategies that use AI or real people to answer questions in real time. People expect that. Absolutely.
What lessons from the physical world still apply to building visibility online today?
Okay, so I'm gonna ask you a question. Okay.
Okay, go for it. I like this.
Yeah. All right. Okay. So
put me in the hot seat.
Yeah. Okay. So I'm going to answer your question, but I'm gonna sort of approach it a little bit differently. So the last time you went out for dinner, walk me through how you decided where to go.
Oh, that's a good one. So I have a place I go to all the time. It's my local. It's a neighborhood business that I want to support. They treat me well there, and it's where I end up all the time. I'm a person of rinse, lather, repeat, I guess, consistency, knowing familiarity, knowing the menu, knowing I enjoy the food. If it's, say, someone wants to go for dinner and they want to experience something different, right? I have a girlfriend who we try to find the most bougiest, fancy restaurants to experience, and our go-to is Instagram. We'll try to do the research on Instagram to see, what's exciting. For example, we went to Montreal. What are the best restaurants in Montreal, or best restaurants in as in sense of speakeasy vibes? So we do our research there. Does that answer your question?
Absolutely. Now, the second part of this question. Now, let's say you've purchased a home or a business and you're looking to renovate. Okay. Put on an addition or some sort of significant renovation. How are you going to decide who to choose or who to contract to do that work for you?
Personal referrals.
Okay. Referrals is good. So are there any more? Is it just referrals? You might look at websites, you might read reviews,
I might, and honestly, I would ask ChatGPT now.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. And it's funny you asked me about that because I'm literally in the middle of a renovation project.
Okay.
Initially, my first go-to was, who do I know? I went to my real estate agent and said, who do you got? Started a conversation with that, and then did my due diligence to get more referrals from other people and made my selection. And then there's gaps in skill sets. So I'm, again, referral. But then I was just like, hey, ChatGPT, my new friend, who do you know in the neighborhood that's, local, small business, and putting those specific parameters, like, so I don't get the big corporations, because I want to be small and intimate team with and my goal is to work with independents. So it's spit out some information.
Super. Yeah. And those are great answers. And they actually answer the bigger question about how AI works, and how people search. So when we consider risk associated to cost, right? A dinner is not crazy in terms of an investment. However, as the risk increases and the cost increases, say for instance with your renovation project, you're looking beyond just Instagram, like where you would look for a restaurant in Montreal, right? So you're considering firsthand experience, referral from your agent. You're looking online to see about gaps, you had said, in experience. That might come from their website. That might come from other reviews that are online. But AI does exactly the same thing. So when you do a search on Google, now there's AI mentions that show up at the top, or when you're prompting ChatGPT with similar questions, it's sort of scraping information from all over the internet to try and synthesize that answer for you. And what it's doing is it's looking for those trust levers, those trust signals. And that's exactly what it is. And that's how I like to explain it, is trust signals. And in that sense, it's a bit of a economy of trust.
You literally just went into my next topic that I wanted to talk with you, because you do talk often about trust being a form of currency. So what does that mean in today's business and business environment?
Okay. If we think about trust as an economy, past trust changes future consideration. Okay. And that's kind of how I like to look at it. So trust can be earned. Okay. It's earned through, any way you add value to a situation. So past experiences, good intentions, useful information, proper messaging. It can also be lost quickly. Bad experiences, right? It can be borrowed. So say there's some sort of licensing or partnership or endorsement. Okay, you're borrowing trust from that body. And it also compounds. And the way I like to look at that is, hey, my dad always bought Ford trucks, so I'm going to buy a Ford truck, or I'm going to buy this Apple product because it fits within the ecosystem that I have, right? So yeah, and it can also be spent. Actually, this is the key. I can't believe I totally glazed over spending trust. But say you have a product extension, or a company has a product extension. So obvious ones are Nike, for instance, moves from selling shoes into performance athletic wear, right? It's spending some trust. People are familiar with their shoes. They've earned trust from their experiences with them, with the shoe, but they're going to take a chance on the breathable shirts and that's an obvious one. So one that might not be quite as obvious is, say, everyone loves the brand Yeti for coolers, right? So say Coolers wants to make sneakers or some other sort of product that isn't really related to coolers, right? Or they break into like cooking gear, like barbecues or whatever. But it's one of those things where it's a bit of a stretch, I guess is my point. So if someone's going to take a chance on that, it's likely because they trust the brand already because of, earned trust.
It's a bigger jump because it's not in alignment, like shoes to outerwear, from like coolers to running shoes, like you said, is a huge leap. And with organizations, while they're trying to earn trust, why do some big companies like Nike succeed, and why other smaller ones maybe struggle?
Okay, so we spoke before about as risk increases, so does the requirement for multiple trust signals, right? So maybe they don't have as much or as many trust signals as they need for their product class or category. Maybe the risk is too high and the trust is too low. Another thing is channel voice. Maybe they're not saying the right things in the right ways in the right places, right? So before we had spoken about Instagram for restaurants. Great. But multiple channel requirements for a contractor, right? So that's exactly what I'm talking about, is maybe Nike has earned enough trust that they don't have to have as many trust signals, but some new company trying to break into that space is going to need more signals on more channels.
Just looping back to, we were talking about researching and looking things up, and going back to AI. AI is really changing the way people discover things. What are businesses not paying attention to or evolving around AI? Because I know this is something you talk about a lot, is AI and the influences in AEO. Am I correct?
Yep. Absolutely. So it all comes back to channels. So I see a lot of customers putting all their eggs in one basket, for instance. So they want to be seen as an expert in one area, but their focus is either SEO on their website or their meta campaign, like their what they're doing on Facebook, for instance. To succeed with AI, you need to branch out from that. It can't be siloed marketing. Your stories, you need stories on more than one channel, and they all need to corroborate one another. I run a bit of an exercise with customers that kind of helps them understand this. I like to call it my ORM, online reputation management. But essentially what I ask them to do is open Claude or ChatGPT and run a series of 2 prompts. So the first prompt being, tell me, and this is funny because I do it for myself every other week, actually, just to see what's changing and how things are moving. But run a prompt. tell me everything, or actually the prompt you would enter in ChatGPT or Claude is, tell me everything you can about Jon Schlaich, my name. Yeah, I'll frame it as reputation management check. So I'll say, would like you to run an online reputation management check, telling me everything you can about Jon Schlaich, surfacing information from everywhere. And that's it. And hit enter and see what comes up. And it's going to scrape information from every channel it has access to. And that's the cool thing about AI is it's going to look on Reddit. It's going to look on old profiles that you created on Pinterest that you might have forgotten about or whatever, right? But it's going to tell you what it understands based on what's available. Okay. And that's interesting because that's your own sort of personal positioning statement. And if you like it, great. If you don't like it, then you need to change it. Right. So, and I tell companies, like, I'm doing this for me, but you really need to do it for you. Your online positioning as a company is much more important than your online position as a person.
Yeah, maybe. Absolutely.
So the next prompt you would enter is if you want to change that positioning, basically say, if I want to be known as or known for or change my positioning to, what needs to change? And it's actually going to give you a playbook, channel by channel, what information needs to be updated to reflect your desired positioning. And that's really important. So it sort of loops back to channel strategy and what people are doing wrong, right? I'd said siloed approaches don't necessarily work. They're not enough anymore. So having a great website, good for you, but it's not enough. Having a strong meta presence, awesome. Again, good for you, but unfortunately it's not enough. You need more channels and yeah, ask AI what it thinks of your online positioning to see where you're surfacing and how to change it so that it does corroborate itself.
I know we talked about this briefly when we first met, and the first thing I did after I got off the call with you is I literally did exactly what you said, and searched myself on AI to see what would come up. Because, and you know, if you're representing a band as a human being on an online platform like LinkedIn, it's really important to see what comes up there. So, what if something comes up that you don't want up there? What do you do?
Yeah, well, okay. So it's funny you asked that. So again, I'd said before that my background is CPG, right? I'd spent a lot of time building design graphics for people. And essentially when I started doing this ORM check, that's exactly what showed up everywhere was, you know, logos I had built or this or a single website. And I'm like, oh no, I'm not. Yes, I do those things, but I don't want to be known as a tactics guy. I want to be known as a strategy guy, right? It's all about visibility. That's my new space. So how do I change it so that Jon Schlaich isn't showing up as graphic designer Jon Schlaich, but marketing guy Jon Schlaich? And like I said, it will give you that playbook, what you need to change, and it suggests how to rewrite your narrative or define yourself on those channels. And yeah, it's a really fun exercise. I'm glad you did it, actually. Quite glad you did it.
Yeah. I'm going to actually probably do the same thing for Kynective Media right after I get off this interview with you, just because I didn't do that. But you've definitely piqued my curiosity. What do you think are the best trust building opportunities that an organization is overlooking?
Authenticity is one, and I'm glad you brought that up, because if you think about, I don't know, and I've heard this, and I've seen it happen actually. If ads are too polished, if videos are too polished, if graphics are too polished, people don't trust them as much as, you know, some sort of personal exchange like ours right here, right? Or short form content on social media where somebody's leaving like a video review about something. That's far more trusted. Or even think about Google reviews, right? Reviews on Google My Business. People leave. Sometimes they look too fabricated. if language is similar. Whereas if someone's leaving a picture and they're talking about their experience with a product or a company, it carries so much more weight. There's so much more authenticity there, right? And that's really, really important. So how do you communicate with audiences without losing that or encouraging that, right? Those are very important.
Yeah, we did come from an era where everything was too perfect and too polished. And now it's like, it's almost great if you mess up. Like just being completely transparent and, in honest conversations. And that I agree with you that when people are just being themselves, it's a win. That mistakes happen and they're okay. It's sort of a shift of a mindset,
Yep. I don't know. There's nothing wrong with things being polished, but having the ability to see that there's a person behind that action is important. And that's why YouTube channels are great, right? Like if you're a contractor and you've got a YouTube channel where you're kind of walking through a site or you're talking to a client, like that again makes it so much more real, right? As opposed to having a photo of a finished product on your website. Also important, but not as trusted as...
Yeah, not as valued.
Yeah,
for sure. So almost like that human interaction between two people being present in a YouTube channel is huge.
Absolutely. So, and again, I'm going to go back to the whole ORM thing. That's one thing that my ORM had brought up was after I had changed things to not become a graphic designer, but to reposition myself as a marketer, it had said, okay, all of these look great. You're doing a really good job at talking about yourself, but that's easy to do, right? It's important to become part of the greater conversation, get other people talking about you, reinforcing what you're saying about yourself. As soon as you're able to do that, those relationships matter. And AI is not going to ever replace that, but it also synthesizes that and pulls that into the equation when it's looking for trust signals. But yeah, authenticity is huge.
We talked about building trust. Do you have any other practical advice or anything that you want to share with our audience around the age of AI, building your online reputation, strengthening those channels? When we talk channels, are there I know that different bands have different channels. Like there's YouTube, you can have Instagram, you can do TikTok. Is there like a baseline you should have more than 3? Are there any rules? Are there no rules? I mean, I know for us, and for me, it's like, who's your audience and where are they?
Yep, for sure. But also now it becomes, what is your audience using? Right. And if your audience is using AI is pulling information from more places than maybe you were first looking, because your audience might be looking at 2 channels, but AI is looking at least 5. Right. So I use 5 as sort of my baseline.
Now, you mentioned Reddit. Is that is something you'd recommend as a platform or a channel that you should be active on, since AI might be scraping it?
Absolutely. Reddit's a tricky one though. And yeah, I don't know if you use Reddit, but Reddit,
nope.
No? Oh, Reddit is
never got it on the Reddit bandwagon. Sorry.
Reddit's fantastic.
You're looking at me in horror. Like what?
No,
what?
I can't believe you're not on Reddit. No. Reddit's really non-biased user reviews or exchanges. Okay, so if you go on Reddit and you start promoting your company, you're going to get killed. People don't tolerate that on Reddit, and that's why it's so wonderful. But that's why it's so scary if you're trying to find ways to become active in that space, right? It sort of lends itself well to my comment before about the greater conversation, right? So if you have a profile on Reddit, your profile's linked to your business and talks about you and where you're from in terms of your brand, your business, and you engage on Reddit in a way that adds value, to the conversation, then you're corroborating your other channels that way, if that makes sense. So, yeah. So if you're an expert on SEO and you're on Reddit talking about SEO and participating, answering questions, steering people in the right direction, and, challenging concepts and just being part of the exchange, you're doing your part. And that's important, but don't ever go on Reddit and sell your SEO services, because you're going to get beat up really fast.
All the bullies are going to come out in the park.
Oh my Lord. Yeah. It's funny. It's funny watching it happen, but no, I shouldn't say that. Maybe I shouldn't say that, but because it happens all the time.
No. Yeah.
Very low tolerance for that sort of thing on Reddit.
Yeah, I had a moment where you're talking about Reddit and conversations and not putting yourself there as selling anything, which is great, because I feel if you sell, you lose people, right? If you go straight to the sell, you're done. Yeah. You're done. And obviously Reddit's going to be a really authentic platform because it's conversations. And when we talk, social is about conversations. Google reviews. I'm not going to say the name of the company. It's a small company. They had a whole bunch of Google reviews that were negative. And then someone asked other people to write a whole bunch of positive reviews to bury it. And when I looked at it after, I just kind of laughed, because if you're in the inner circle, you know that these people are friends of the business, right? Mm-hmm. And I'm like, that's not a best practice, is it?
It could get caught, and it's dangerous. So what a lot of people don't understand is, Google's smart, right? I've had reviews yanked off of my page because it thought that they were fabricated, and I was so frustrated because they weren't. But a client actually used ChatGPT to help sort of word their review, and Google's like, I don't think so. That comes down.
No.
But so when people are doing things like this, maybe they're coming from the same IP address, multiple reviews, or maybe there's too many reviews in one day, right? That's all of a sudden unnatural.
Google's going to catch that.
Yeah. If it looks at the cadence prior to, and there was one, every other week, and then all of a sudden Friday there were 6, it's gonna be a little skeptical, right? So
right, exactly.
Yeah, that's funny. Yeah, there's all sorts of things people do, and I've tried to help clients get reviews removed because they weren't accurate, and that's actually really tricky too. So it's one of those things. It's people don't trust.
People can be
reviews,
really
but
right.
I find that they actually do a pretty good job at sort of filtering out the fake or the
fake ones,
fabricated.
The fake news, the onion reports.
Yeah, and it's hard for businesses to prune, right? If they don't like what's on there. So it's a really good place to go if you're looking for answers.
Yeah, and hopefully there aren't people out there abusing the system.
Yeah, that happens for sure.
Yeah, of course. It's human nature for some. Jon, is there anything else you want to share with our audience before we wrap this conversation up that I may have missed in our dialogue?
Well, you had brought up before, you can't sell on Reddit, right? So I wanted to point out that's actually a great tip for almost any channel. And I talk to clients about this all the time. So you've got a client we work with who's very interested in building all of their messaging around sell on spaces like LinkedIn, and certain spaces like that. There's less of a tolerance for that sort of thing as well. And my comment is, you can have meaningful exchanges with your audience without selling, right? And a lot of that has to do with bringing trust and adding value to the exchange. So this particular client does a lot of work. I'm just going to make it up. Say they're a logistics customer, right? And they're rather than talking about selling, if you're talking about other sort of happenings within the transportation industry, what happens is people see you as a valuable resource for knowledge, And when they're looking for answers themselves, they're going to come to you, and they're more apt to do that if you're not always sell. But that applies to any industry. And I don't know why I picked logistics, but I mean, yeah, whatever. If you're a contractor, if you're, in the B2C space, whatever, the same applies, right?
I mean, I think it goes back to the heart of everything is building trust in an online world, and taking in-person experiences into the digital space and making sure that you have a clear, concise message that isn't hard to sell. Jon, I want to thank you so much for joining us today. And I really enjoy this conversation, and I'm excited to share it with all our listeners.
Yeah, thanks for having me. It's been a lot of fun.
A big thank you again for Jon joining us today and sharing his perspective on trust, visibility, reputation, and the evolving relationship between people and technology. If you'd like to continue the conversation with Jon, you'll find all his information in our show notes. And if today's podcast resonated with you, please remember to subscribe to the Kynective Media Podcast. Remember to keep staying connected and keep telling the stories that matter.